hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Here we come once again for another show.
Hello, hello, everyone. Wow.
It is one of
That's
those.
all I'm saying.
Yeah. Things are a little hectic right now. A little hectic.
Yes.
Got a few things going on.
A lot going on.
Some of it unplanned, unanticipated, but you know, it's all good. We're here.
We're here.
Once
You know
again.
what? We just keep moving. You know, we just keep rolling right along, right, babe?
Rolling.
Rolling.
Yep. To get done with this, we got to roll some more.
That's right.
Rolling tomorrow and rolling them. Oh God.
Come what may.
Yeah, it's rolling right now. How's everybody doing tonight?
We ready, right, babe?
We ready.
All right, we ready.
All right, we ready to do this. Okay. Call your friends. Tell somebody. Give somebody a message. Share it. Hashtag it. I don't know. Do whatever you got to do. Watch party.
Whatever.
Let's get it going. Let's
Yes,
start. We missed last week. So
yes, we did.
So we got to make up for it.
Yes, something else unexpected.
Yeah.
You know, came up, but you know, hey.
So we have to have twice an intense conversation tonight.
Well, I'm feeling quite intense. You know what? Things are quite intense right now.
Intensed out. Well, you know, there's days like that.
Yes.
Definitely one of them days, folks.
Mm.
So how's everybody doing? Hopefully you're doing okay. We're
weathering the storm. I hope you guys, everyone is okay.
Yes.
You know, we do
storm.
what we have to do to get through.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yes, we do.
You got to do what you got to do.
We don't fold.
You don't get to plan everything.
We keep pushing.
Right? You know,
That's right.
Everything is not the way you plan it.
Exactly.
Sometimes you got to roll.
You got to roll with the punches, right?
Roll with the waves.
That's right. That's right.
Go where it takes you.
We're not perfect.
That's
Life's
right.
not perfect.
Mhm.
So you just have to be ready to deal.
So here we are. So say hello to us, somebody. Say hello, wave if you're on a watch party, whatever the case may be.
Yes, somebody. Where
make some
are
noise
you?
here and let us know that you're here. Good evening. Glad to have you with us.
Yes.
Missed you last week, but we are back this week. In case y'all wondered, we are back and got a lot of things to talk about, some key things to talk about tonight. In particular, you know, the Daniel Prude situation.
Oh, wow.
Happened this week.
Isn't
we're
that
definitely going to want
something?
to talk about that. And
Yes.
It's a Rochester event, but it means so much more.
Right.
Well,
Well,
it's a national.
It made
issue.
national news. Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk
Right
about
along
that.
with everything else.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
George Floyd, Daniel Prude, Ahmaud Arbery.
Yep.
Same situation
Many
here in
more.
Rochester.
And it's awfully ironic, you know, that all this comes in the middle of, yes, Heather, we are here this week.
Hey, hello. Hi,
She was
Heather.
looking for us last week. So.
Oh, yeah,
We're
Heather.
here.
You know, things have been,
But, you know, so you got it's in the middle of Black History Month that this comes out, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, actually it was last year during Black History Month that it happened.
Exactly.
Daniel Prude was last February. So here we are now a year later.
Yes.
And, you know, there's more to be had on that. Anthony, hey, man. Glad to see you here. Yes. Great topic. Yeah, it is a great topic.
Yeah.
And we want your feedback, too. So I'm going to talk about that, talk about Black history. I want to talk about Malcolm X a little bit.
Yes. We've been watching some of the movies on Netflix and what have you. About Malcolm X.
Lots to learn.
So we're
there.
learning a lot,
more.
more.
Want to talk about that, of course, COVID and things that are going on with that. I do want to say, first of all, if you want to jump in at any time, you can either comment or you can call us. I'm sure there's some opinions out there about some of the stuff we're going to talk about this week. So if you want to join in the conversation, you can give us a call at area code 951-799-9032. Let me put it in the comments right now for you. So if you're watching on the church page, and you forget, if you decide anytime throughout that you want to join in the conversation, you can call us at that number, area code 951-799-9032, and share your opinion on different things. So before we go into those, there is another topic that I wanted to bring up, probably one less known, less recognized, but there was a story that came out, actually I just saw it today, in Nigeria. 300 Nigerian girls kidnapped by gunmen. 300. And it's not the first time this situation has happened, but it's happening seemingly more and more. Just share this story with you so you can see what we're talking about. Gunmen kidnapped more than 300 girls in a raid in a northwest Nigerian school. And this has been happening now. It happened a couple of years ago, but this year in particular already, it's been happening a lot. This is about at least a third or so case. In one case, they took the girls, they let the boys go. They release the boys, kept the girls. It's largely about trying to get money. So they're looking for money for holding hostages. And, you know, you have these boarding schools in Nigeria that kind of out by themselves. And, you know, these gunmen come in and just take over. They don't have any kind of powerful security like that.
Right.
And so they come in and just kidnap everybody, take them away. And so this is, not the first time it's happened. Gunman kills a student and kidnapped 42 in a night. Raid on Nigerian boarding school. There have been several of these that have been happening in that area. And it's really a travesty, not something that people hear so much over here, but it really is a serious situation that's going on there.
Yes, it is.
People are getting killed, their lives at risk. They take these children. Sometimes they take them and they take them for other purposes. They take them for trafficking and things like that. And it's horrible what's happening there. So I guess we gotta, at least say that we're blessed in terms of that. But you wonder where all these kids in the United States disappeared to, too.
Yes, it is a very, very serious matter with child trafficking. And it's very, very sad.
Over the border into Mexico and back, kids are disappearing literally every day.
Yes.
And it's not just that everybody's just deciding to run away. There's just kids missing all the time. Yes. There was a story this week. I forget exactly where it was, but 22-year-old was found with a 13-year-old child stowed away in his apartment. Somehow he had kidnapped her and they found him. These things are happening all the time, but this kind of magnitude of stuff, hundreds being taken at a time, is something that we just don't see here. We're not familiar with that.
Exactly.
But it's a reality in other places. So, I guess to some degree we have to count our blessings, right?
And yes, and for a lot of reasons, yes.
So just wanted to start with that, just to throw that out there. But we did want to talk about Daniel Prude and the situation that happened this week. So this week, as many people, I'm sure just about everybody is familiar with the Daniel Prude story in terms of what it's all about. Daniel Prude here in Rochester back last February had come to Rochester, I believe from Chicago, to visit family. And he had some emotional, mental issues. And so as a result of that, he ended out on the streets. He was, I think he was high at the time, and his family called the police to try and help get him under control.
Was he high, or was he having a mental issues? Was he having a mental breakdown?
He's definitely having a break. He may have been just a breakdown.
I understood it to be that he was.
You may be right on that.
Yes,
so thank you.
He was in distress.
Right, definitely in distress.
From mental
issues. Yes. They came. The police come. It's the middle of the winter. The man is out on the street, butt naked, right?
Yes.
On the street. And obviously delirious. And, what we saw, the big thing is we saw it on video.
On video, yes.
Right? Just like with George Floyd, we got to witness so much of it on video. And it really became very clear, everybody got to see what happened. Lots of opinions about what happened right, what happened wrong. There's a lot that can be said. People act differently when they don't realize they're on camera, or when they're not thinking about it. And so the policemen, were relatively carefree about the whole thing. And then at a certain point, they ended up putting a spit bag, they call it, on him.
Exactly.
And then
from spitting.
Yeah, and he sat, and then they sat him down, and they were still kind of laughing and kidding around about things. And eventually they decided to put him down on the ground to stop him, I guess, from spitting through the bag.
They put the spit bag over his head.
Yeah.
He was handcuffed, hands behind his back.
With the spit bag.
And with the spit bag.
So clearly not a danger.
Not a danger.
Right.
And
hadn't really done anything threatening. Right.
Exactly. And he was nude. No clothes.
Right.
In the winter.
In the middle of the street.
In the middle of the street.
On the floor. Yeah.
Yes.
And so then they end up putting him down face first on the ground.
And suffocating.
Right. And holding him down, holding him sideways. He ends up basically suffocating.
They suffocated him.
Right.
Yes.
And then it was ruled as a homicide. Right, by the coroner.
Yes.
They stated that it was a homicide.
He died from asphyxiation. Right. Yes.
And so homicide would assume that somebody stopped or hindered his breathing.
Yes.
Right, not just that it haphazardly happened.
They
and so
cut
all
off his
this,
breathing.
right. So all this goes on last year. And finally, we have, the people in the city are outraged. You have the state attorney general, very just recently at that point elected a black woman, set up with a mindset to help support African Americans and stuff like that, and after all that, here we come now a year later, and it's determined that no charges can be filed.
Right.
And so everybody obviously is outraged.
Exactly.
Right?
So here we are marching once again.
Yep.
Just like with George Floyd,
right.
The same exact situation.
And so the question that comes up, and this is put very well in this paper, in this article, Daniel Prude died as it was ruled, and it was ruled a homicide. So why isn't it a crime?
Exactly.
Why are they not, indicted of a crime?
Of a homicide, a crime.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, that's the question that keeps coming up. And that's the frustration a lot of people have in terms of how these things keep happening, how people keep getting killed via the police.
And they're not held. Right? The police are not held accountable.
And by the way, police, remember that saying that used to be serve and protect?
Oh, yeah.
and now, over and over again, people are getting killed unnecessarily, unprovoked,
yes,
in these circumstances, and a variety of them. And here you go. How is it that they are, dying in situations like this? So how can this be a homicide, but not a crime? There's a statement in here that I think expresses pretty well, at least what the Attorney General is saying. It says the system was built to protect and shield, and this is her words, built to protect and shield officers from wrongdoing and accountability. So James said, that's her name, James said Tuesday after announcing the Prude grand jury's decision, the system is too often allows officers to use deadly force unnecessarily and without consequences. And that is a system that at its core is broken.
Yes, it is.
That is a really clear and strong statement. So the point that she is making is that the laws themselves are not set up for this kind of situation because they bear allowance for police to use force in various ways, and the laws are written in their favor. So it's very difficult. It says earlier on, it can be very difficult to truly enforce these kind of laws on a police officer when they are acting in their role as an officer. The law gives a lot of grace to that. So, the question is this really an issue of the policemen that were at fault? Is it the system at fault? Who's at fault for this? Clearly, this is wrong.
Oh, it is very wrong.
I don't think you'll find anybody that's going to say, looking at that situation, say, well, or that should have just happened.
It's okay.
You can't blame it on Daniel Prude. A lot of times they try and thrust the blame back. Well, they were doing this. Well, they were running away. Well, they were resisting. The man was sitting there tied up on the ground.
Hands behind his back. Don't forget, no clothes on.
No clothes on. Right. And so is this, who's at fault for this situation that ends up with a man dying? So this is where y'all comments come in, by the way. This is where engagement comes in.
Yes.
Somebody need to get online.
Conversation. It's a two-way thing.
But this is it's a strong question. So is it the officer's fault? Is it what they did? Did they do their saying?
Did they act within the laws and the rules and the training of the police department? I mean, this is what they're saying.
Right. Typically, they say, "Look, exactly, we were doing what we were told
and what we were taught to do."
Right.
Well, then they need to dismantle the police, and they need to retrain. They need to do some psychological evaluations, because in my mind, this is very ill. It is very sick to think it is okay to kill anyone, not even an animal, So I think there should be restructuring.
But, we saw the video. It's been a while now, but we saw the video. Do you really think they were they intended to kill him?
Well, if you suffocate somebody, if I put a bag over your head or whatever, and I cut off your breathing, I know that is going to kill Well, to kill somebody.
But the bag is not like a plastic bag. The bag was breathable, right? You can breathe through that
bag. But if you hold it tight enough, it is going to, obviously, so there's my point.
Right.
They held it tight enough against his face, against his nostrils and his mouth that he could not breathe. Well, even if it was breathable.
Right. What they did was they didn't hold the bag, they held the back of his head on the ground. It's very possible that in doing that, the bag came up tight on his face. Right. But this is what I'm trying to get at. Did the police officers intentionally do this, or was this a bad mistake, bad procedure? Because they held him down. They did hold him down. They got on his back. They held him down. They inhibited his breathing in a way that they were trained to do. Right.
I agree with that. They were trained to do it that way.
And in the midst of doing this, he suffocated. He wasn't able to get enough oxygen for whatever the case, and he suffocated. So the question number one is, was there intent? Number two is, did they do something outside or wrong compared to what they were taught or trained to do?
In my opinion, it was excessive force.
Okay.
Because he was handcuffed with his hands behind his back. He was no threat to how many officers were there?
Like 5 or
There was about 5 officers, as I can remember. There were 5 officers. It is in the dead of winter, Black History Month, February last year. In the dead of winter, yeah, he was out of control. He had a mental breakdown.
He wasn't even that out of control. I mean, he was bound up.
So
the only thing he was doing was talking.
This is very true.
After a while, he was just saying please and calling.
Well, I'm saying they called because the people that called, his family initially his family called because they needed help from the police. Could you imagine how someone must feel when they call for the police to help on their own, and then that person ends up dead at the hands of the police officers?
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
It was excessive force. I just really don't think that it was necessary to do any of that.
I think there were a couple of things that were clear. You can get to this issue of, did they intentionally do it? Get past that for a second. You get into did they really cause this, or were they not following instructions? But one thing is clear, they were very callous about the whole thing.
Very callous.
First of all, you have a naked man on the ground in the snow. Why would you not get a blanket? Why would you not try and, I mean, anybody, if you're amped up, if you had adrenaline pumping, he may or may not be feeling the cold, because you really didn't hear him talking about I'm cold. No. But if anybody with any common sense,
he's trying to live. He don't care about being cold.
But I'm saying anybody with any common sense is looking at this and saying, you know what? This man is out here in the cold. He's gonna have freeze to death. He's gonna lose a toe.
He didn't say he was cold, not one time.
Right. He was. Somebody should have wrapped that man up, got him off the floor. Not only did they have him sitting on the floor, right. Not only did they have him sitting on the floor, they laid him face down on the concrete, even more surface area on that cold. So and we're very light about the whole thing. I honestly don't think they expected him to die. I think they were actually surprised when all of a sudden he couldn't breathe. I think this is a little different from the George Floyd situation. George Floyd, they subdued until he didn't move and stayed on him 2 minutes more. These guys started noticing after they were doing this procedure that he wasn't moving. And so they started lifting him up. It's like, something happened.
We went too far.
Right. Something just went wrong.
Yeah.
But it's still, so definitely there is an issue there of them being very callous in how they did their job. They did not show any care or concern for this guy as a person. Right? Because anybody who cared about anybody as a person would have had him off that floor, would have had him wrapped up in something, would not have had him out there in the middle of the street. I mean, think about it. If that was your family member, would you have them sitting out there in the street naked?
No. Well, another thing, once they have the spit bag over his head, the spit can no longer go out.
I don't know why they ended up
why did they have to put him? Why did they have to? Right? Why did they have to go any further than putting this bag over his head?
I don't know. I don't know why they felt, and I almost think there was something missing in the video that we saw at that point, but there's I haven't seen an indication. Maybe somebody else out there knows an indication as to what it was that caused them or his behavior to put him down on the ground. But it just led to an escalating problem. Now getting some comments out here. Get some comments out here. So if you're inhibiting breathing, you are
suffocating someone.
That person.
That's
so
right.
You already have something wrapped around them. Again, here's what I go back to. The system obviously tells them, because what came out after that from those representing the police is that they followed their procedure, which is a major cop-out, by the way.
Yeah, of course it is.
But this goes back to what we're saying. It goes back to what the Attorney General was saying. There's a systematic issue here.
Yes.
First of all, how do you train somebody that this is the way to handle this situation? Mm-hmm. So it's not even about retraining. You got to change what you're training them to do.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that is the issue. There lies the issue. Mm-hmm. There lies the issue.
Right.
You know what? It wouldn't matter how you were trained. If you had a conscience, you would not take it that far.
Yeah, I mean, there was without reason. There was no reason.
It was heartless.
Right. Exactly.
It's heartless.
It's like, there are some roles, some jobs that you do, which are so difficult that you tend to separate yourself from the humanity of it.
Exactly.
When you are a psychologist, when you work with psychotic people, when you work with prisoners, there are times when you almost separate yourself from even medical.
Yes.
You're in the hospital, somebody's dying. You have to separate yourself and go into a different mode. Otherwise, you'll be crying and bawling and falling out, every night, especially with COVID going on, right?
Yes.
And I believe there are times when police officers have done this so many times that they really lose the humanity of the situations they're dealing with.
And that's a problem.
Yeah,
that is
a big problem.
Huge problem. Yes.
So you're going through the motions, but you don't really care about the people. To serve and to protect. Their role should have been to protect that
him.
man.
Exactly.
And instead, their procedures ended up in him being dead. There's a problem there. And so there's clearly a lot, and this is what we keep going back to over and over again. There has to be a review of these procedures.
It really does, because, quite frankly, it is the same slave catcher procedure. Slave catcher mentality is to catch, maim, and kill once you have caught that person.
So we were talking, and we're going to talk about
it hasn't changed since then.
We were talking about Malcolm X, right? And we were watching the Malcolm X movie earlier this week. And one of the things that showed, and it really stuck out to me, when he was in prison. I didn't know he went to prison, by the way. But when he was in prison.
I did read the book. About
when he was in prison, and, being a little hard, a little tough, they threw him in the hole. And it was so reminiscent of how that caused a response from him, exactly how you would see them breaking slaves from being resilient
and being what they would call rebellious.
They would move from that aspect of toughness and resistance. And in that case, it was like, remember in Roots, it was, what's your name?
Yes.
And in this movie with him, it was, what's your number?
Yes.
You are this number.
This is your number.
Forget who you think you are.
Exactly.
This is who you're going to be here. And they stayed on that, and he stayed in there until ultimately he broke. And that is a mentality of how you deal with slaves. So my point being is, what you're saying is the aspect of imprisonment and policing does have that same kind of tie.
The same tie
of controlling and regulating and breaking down identities of people.
Exactly. It's like they don't want you to have an identity. Your identity is what they say you are. And that is so very, very wrong.
That's rough. And there are some that have tried to change the system, but these systematic things still exist, and they still drive the overall system. And so until there is a huge review and say, look, we got to change policing. And I think that's a little bit, Anthony, you left, man. Come back, man. I was getting to you. Saw you up there. Come on back.
You gonna talk?
Man, shoot, man, call back. we just finishing this stuff.
Yes,
this statement. I think that there have been some that have tried to make some improvements, but the system overall,
it's the system,
has to be reviewed, and it has to be brought up to date.
It's a system. It's a culture. It's a good old boy network. And it is wrong.
It's definitely wrong. And it's influenced by what's worked in the past. And,
exactly.
So, and here's the thing that frustrates me is everybody tries to tweak it, right? Okay, so no more chokeholds. All right, so we're not going to use those spit bags like that no more. Right. Okay, you can't, it's not a one piece thing. Exactly. And it's all fixed. Right?
Exactly.
There has to be a holistic look, and it has to be not just one place. It has to be across the board.
Across the board, every city, every state needs to follow the same rules.
Yeah, it has to be reviewed at the whole level. Okay, yes. Anthony, I see. Kyle's on too. He'll be coming up, I'm sure too. Man, Kyle, call early because we got to leave soon today.
Yes.
Anthony, you on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. Sorry about that. Yeah, we get a little hepped up here.
No, it's okay. I wasn't sure what the rules were. So
yeah, we was hepped up.
You were there.
I was hearing double.
We were hyped up before we got on.
No problem. Talk to us, man. What's on your mind?
Man, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I mean, very strong and solid points. I think if we're saying that the root cause is some form of racism, right? I think one thing we can do better at is, and not we, meaning the people on this call, but just in general, is identifying that, yes, we have systemic and, racism but we have to understand that there are people who actually are upholding, at this point, you're upholding it because you didn't create it. You know what I mean? So, I think one of the main issues, even when we're talking about the George Floyd situation, is people cannot be held individuals cannot be held accountable because they're protected by these systems.
Exactly.
But we never get to the individuals. We have difficulty identifying who are these individuals upholding, these rules, these different things. So I know we have like the police union and very powerful forces wherever you go. You have the Fraternal Order of Police, which is that's a gargantuan situation to say the least. You know what I mean? Right. So there's a high level of protection there with a strong financial backing, a strong legal backing that really, this is who, our DAs, whether it be, at the local level, or if we're talking about, the state attorney general, or even at the federal level, it's difficult, I think, for those individuals to really make significant change because there's such a powerful backing, for these, not just police departments, but the police organizations.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the thing is you can't, one person doing one thing cannot fix this problem.
Exactly.
And you are absolutely right. There are some major, I mean, you listen to what's happened to, with like I said, the union, the Locust Club. And first of all, it's not in their interests. And this is just policemen in general. It's not in their interest to tie their hands in any way. They want to be able to use whatever force works for them. And so, they as a start are not interested in talking about compromising how they police. And their incentive is, look, I need to be able to protect myself for them really crazy bad guys that are coming at me. And so, no, they don't want to, have somebody tell them, okay, now you can't do this and you can't do that. Because they're like, look, I can't police them.
Yes, but they are hurting and harming people that are not a threat. There's the issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's above and beyond. It's at their discretion. And like she was saying,
with a toy gun,
a water gun, like she was saying, the laws are written so that it gives them leeway. Say, oh, I thought he had a gun. Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was a real gun. And to be fair, to some extent, you have to understand. I mean, you are in, if you're a policeman in the middle of a situation, okay, and it's quick, it's pressure, right? Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you make mistakes because you are human and you're imperfect. it is very possible for you to make a death causing mistake. And so the question is, should they be thrown in jail for making a mistake? But then how do you segregate out
how
the
many
ones
mistakes
that are oops versus the ones that are like
exactly
that really made a mistake?
Exactly. And
well, not only that, how if I make a mistake on my job, I can only make so many mistakes.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can barely make 2. And then guess what? They're not concerned about my livelihood. They're not concerned about my pension, my 401k.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you made a mistake that cost the business. Right. And so I'm held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And me knowing that, I have to operate at a certain level
Mm-hmm.
in order to maintain. I had to operate at a certain level in order to even get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? As is true for all of us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not holding, right, the Rochester's best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just keep it local.
Mm-hmm.
We're not holding Rochester's best to the same criteria.
Right.
And they have a very strong backing, as we all said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, our community does not have a strong legal backing, and we do not have a unified, strong financial backing, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what makes any community great. We look at the Italian community, we look at the Jewish community, right?
They have about the African American community,
a unified,
and that's in a lot of
financial backing. They have a unified legal backing, right? And so therefore, if you kill a young Jewish boy in the middle of the streets,
yes. Oh yeah.
There are consequences. So currently, there are no consequences.
Try that in Brooklyn.
For killing a Black person.
No, there isn't.
There are no consequences at all, because we as a people, we depend on the government, right, to do what's right, and we know that from day one,
right,
they've never done right. I mean, look how long from 1865, to today. You know what I mean? If we just look at the proclamation, that allegedly set us free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then we look to today and we still see what's happening. We understand that really bad things may have happened to us, but at the same time, bad things still happen to people in our community. And because of those power brokers, there's no consequence for them doing that. Right. We don't, our boycotts don't mean a whole lot, because guess what? Everyone doesn't participate.
Right.
We don't have a single legal backing. We have the NAACP. We have different organizations, but it's also fragmented. But they don't carry the weight for whatever reason. So there has to be something that can make someone pay. You know what I mean?
And
we're
that's
not
why they keep doing it.
donors to police organizations, and all these different things. So we don't carry a lot of weight.
Yeah,
and so there's no consequence.
I think you're right
things like that.
In a lot of that. And I think when it comes to our organizations, there's a big difference between our organizations now and the organizations of the 60s, because you're right. Number one, it's very fragmented. And, the one thing that I really admired as you study what Martin Luther King did was he was a master negotiator. He took the power and influence that came from the volume that was behind him, the disruption that was caused. And he went in and he worked to establish policies that needed to be, that he could get through the government. And right now, my concern is that a lot of the protests that are happening are going so far, but they're not going to that next level. They're making the noise, they're expressing the frustration, but they're not driving to get specific policies through.
Well, you know what?
I agree.
Yeah. We have the people that are making noise. They're necessary, but we also need people that are going to drive the policy change.
You got to take it to the next level.
You have to take it to the next level. You just can't just make noise.
Right. We had a great opportunity that came up earlier on, last year with George Floyd in particular, the martyr, unfortunately, that he was, and the others at the same time. There was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of turn. There was a lot of attention. It was the right time, but you have to make that transition to, okay, this is specifically, and, I don't want to put negatives on it, but I think we have to come up with very practical answers of this is what needs to happen. And it needs to be, you need to be able to narrow that down specifically and then drive it as one voice to the right people. And it's been kept so scattered. What's happening in Minneapolis? What's happening in Rochester? What's happening in here? In these, versus a nationwide, unified, this is what we need to go after.
This is what needs to happen.
Hey, Anthony, we're gonna have to let you go. I got another caller, but man, good points. Thanks for calling in.
All right, man.
Catch us again, man.
Hey, thanks.
All right. We got the Reverend Bishop on. Amen. We want to let him come on with us for a couple of minutes. We got to get out of here a little bit early. Bishop Clark, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Oh, man, we're getting wound up. I think the blood is starting to pump in here.
Yes,
that. Getting warm in this room.
These are some things that pump you up, get your blood boiling.
When I look at one of the problems in law enforcement, it's not only the culture, but it's also part of the culture is their hiring practices. And the question I've always asked, who's doing the hiring and who are they hiring? And I'm inclined to believe, because law enforcement, nobody does a more thorough background check than law enforcement.
This is very true.
Nobody. Between them and the government. So I'm inclined to believe that when they hire people, they know exactly who they're hiring. That's their white supremacists.
Go ahead.
Whatever they may be, whether they're white supremacists, whether they belong to neo-Nazis, or whether they have a racist attitude, they know exactly who they're hiring. And I don't think they're going to be able to change anything until they drain the swamp.
Pretty much. See, that's my brother.
Well,
and the swamp needs to be drained.
Yes.
Because that culture, because they have hired people of the same nature, of the same thought, of the same mind.
Same heart, same mind.
And I don't even want to get into the spiritual part of it, because question number 2 is, how do you train a demon?
But to your point, here's the issue. They are not going to let go of that for you can call it whichever reason you want. Like we talked about the Locust Club. We talked about the incentive of those who represent the police. You talk about racism. They are not going to just give it up.
Well, that's what this is all about.
Right. It has to be
They want that
force.
control.
And by the way, in the 60s, they didn't either. They weren't just going to give it up.
No.
There was a force and there was a political influence where they were caught in a position where they had to do something. They didn't want to. Johnson didn't want to do a lot of the stuff that he ended up signing on for, but he was cornered politically to where he had to do it. Even Lincoln
exactly.
did what he had to do because there was a political issue associated, and so that's the only way to really approach these. You can protest, and it's necessary to make the noise in order to get things, in order to get the attention. But then you have to take it to, okay, here's specifically what needs to be done. This is what we're calling to be done. And to just, to say defund the police, or we don't need police officers anymore, and leave it there is not a starter.
No, that's not
the
answer either.
That's not it.
No.
What we have seen policies change. We have seen we've seen from slavery to Jim Crow. Then we've seen from Jim Crow to the civil rights movement.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm all for policy change.
Right.
But they've changed so many policies. And right now, today in 2021, we are still fighting the same fight. With all these policies and all this retraining that has been done, and we're still fighting the same fight.
But let me ask you a question.
Really the answer?
Let me ask a question. Have they ever changed the police system? I mean, they've changed. We've talked through policies about a lot of other changes. There have been child policies and equal rights, voting rights, all these other things. And there have been progressions, even policies surrounding hiring practices, all this kind of stuff. And by the way, corrupt people are always going to work through the cracks of any system. You just have to keep narrowing out.
No doubt.
You have to keep narrowing out the cracks. But, in all the things that have happened, man, we got a lot of people on probably wound up as we are. See all these names flash past. But listen, in all the things that they've changed, when have they made changes to the police system?
They haven't. That's
they
the
have
issue.
Never made a change to the police system.
Right.
It is still the old slave catcher system.
And that's exactly what
and
it
has
is.
always been that.
It's always been that.
I'm
You
glad-
know,
I'm
they-
glad
wait a
y'all
minute.
say
They're
stuff.
still- they're
And
still
as I
sticking-
said, another problem.
They're
is
still
I want
sticking
you to hear
dogs
this.
on us.
Another problem
Dogs.
is that the psychological profile that they have portrayed of black men in the media, they portrayed of black men in advertisement, in their mind justifies them coming into our communities with their hands on their weapons, if not already drawn.
Exactly.
Look at what happened. I can't remember his name. The man that just came out of his garage with his phone in his hand.
And
And
at
they
home.
shoot him coming out of his own garage because they heard somebody might have been in the neighborhood. He's coming out of his own garage with a phone
With
in
his
his hand,
phone.
other hand
And
behind him.
they
Shoot
killed him.
Yeah,
They
they
kill
shot
him.
him and killed him.
They shot him and killed him.
They shot him and killed him at home.
At home.
It's
In his
it's-
garage,
and some people in their
holding
homes,
his phone.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there is an assumption, there's a mindset,
It's a mindset.
there is a racial profiling aspect to it, which the system allows them to go behind that and say, look, I was in fear for my life.
Mhm.
I had to shoot. I thought he had a gun. Oops, sorry. Fire me. I made a mistake. I ain't going to jail, but just fire me and I'll move on and find something else to do. It's really, there are systematic issues in terms of policing that, as we're saying, have never really been addressed or changed that have to be addressed now. If there's ever a time when we say, look, okay, the other issues, we handled this in the past, we talked about this is the time. We got to deal with this. I mean, it should be going all the way up to Biden's camp right now saying, look, if there's an issue we need to deal with, it's the policing issue.
Yes.
And then there needs to be support. There needs to be senators, there need to be congressmen that line up to say, it's time we do something. But it's not happening. How many senators, how many congressmen have you heard even talking about any of these incidents?
Well, you know what? You have very
None.
powerful, influential people that are in Congress, that are in politics, that are your policemen, that are okay with killing Black people.
I want to say it again. How many of these senators, how many of these congressmen have you seen in press conferences talking about the travesty of a Daniel Prude? Or how many of them, when George Floyd was killed, how many elected officials, aside from the ones that were local, have you heard say anything about this? Nothing. They have completely stayed away from it.
Yeah, well, they were at the Capitol. Wait a minute, they were raiding the Capitol.
Well, when they got raided at the Capitol, then they were like, hey, wait a minute, that ain't right. Y'all can't come against us. You're supposed to be going against them.
That's why they're not going against it.
But this is the whole issue, is that, unless you transition this to a political policy issue that can be driven from the top down, the individuals I feel for, I think it's Lucretia James, the Attorney General, who gets in power and says, now I'm in a position to help. Now I can help get some of this stuff right. And she goes through this process and realizes, oops, I can't do anything, right? Because you can't do this with one person.
No, you can't.
It has to be a unified effort that gets politicians to start talking about it, start saying there has to be something done. And I hate to, I don't even want to say it. I don't even say it.
Well,
when one of their people,
Well, can I say something?
When one of their people is the one,
well,
then you get the ride.
They really need to drain the swamp, because that the FBI and the CIA have supposedly been investigating law enforcement all over the country, and they're claiming that they just discovered, but they knew it all along, that white supremacist groups have always encouraged their members to seek careers in law enforcement.
Yes. Well, here's the situation. We are dealing with wickedness in high places.
Oh, now you're preaching.
Hey, she started it.
And that's what it is. Basically, that's what it is.
Okay, so now we go back to my question. How do you train a demon?
There you go. What do you do with that?
Man, you gotta
pray and cast them out, pray, fast, bless oil, you
gotta cast them out. That's what it comes down to. Yes. Cast them out of power, cast them out of position. You gotta get them out of there.
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right, man, I'm gonna let you go because we gotta wind out early. But appreciate you calling us. So it's about 10 of. Unfortunately, folks, we got to go. I see lots of people on, and glad to have you with us.
Yeah.
Hope this gives everybody some thoughts and some insights, and we're going to pick it back up next week. We didn't get a chance to talk about Malcolm X. I wanted to talk about Malcolm X more. Didn't get a chance to talk about COVID. Didn't get a chance to talk about a few other things, but I think we had a great conversation.
We did. You know what? We'll have another conversation.
We will be
next
back
Saturday.
Next week.
That's right. And then the week after that, there's a lot to talk about.
And so I do invite somebody to join us every Saturday, 8 p.m. We'll be back next Saturday, and we're going to do some more and talk about some serious stuff. So join us, and we'll look forward to having you with us again next time. All right, everybody, we're out of here. We're moving. We're moving out.
Yes, we're going to the next part of our night.
We got to go on to the next part of our night.
Oh my God, it doesn't stop here.
It's one of those nights.
Yes.
One of those weekends. Yes. But thank you, everybody. Join us tomorrow morning. We'll be back on with our Sunday morning program tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. We're continuing on our program we've been doing, a series we've been doing on entering the presence of God. And so join us tomorrow morning, 11:30. We will be back. Until next time, next week, God bless you.
God bless.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Stay safe. Yes.
You can turn the table. Turn and tell your neighbor.